right, start video. Ah, there we go. Okay, cool.
Apparently I just started broadcasting. What's that? So we missed all that, but oh well, we'll get going.
Right on. Thanks for that introduction. Really, really kind words. And I'm super excited about the new book Greg has put out. I know the first book that he had was super formative for us. We give it to pretty much every client we work with. It's the real deal. And what's awesome about it is that there's so many business books that are written for corporate America, and so many small businesses try to take those corporate America lessons and apply them, and they don't work very well. And I think what's really awesome about Greg's book is it's written just for that small business owner, and it's legit. So I'm excited to see that new book. Let me toss my deck up here on the screen. Give me just a sec. All right, so you should see a bunch of bamboo and planting seeds.
There it is, I see it.
Right, great, thanks, Mike. All right, so we've only got an hour here, and I have a lot of content. My goal is to help people who are in the room today or who watch this video leave with some new insights. And unlike a lot of marketing discussions that are out there that are like, hey, here's 10 things you need to do, or 5 practices for SEO, or 10 digital strategies, I think that the most service that I can give you is a new way of thinking, because new ways of thinking can expand and can move into different tactics and ways of working, and I think ultimately help you in the long run. And so with that idea in mind, there's a lot of stuff in here that's about shaping how you approach your business. In terms of the agenda today, give you a little bit of backstory as to why I believe in small businesses, why Kinesis is such a champion for small business, some of the data that we've gathered around what makes small businesses successful with a little bit of an angle towards marketing. I'll share with you one of our primary frameworks that we talk about in the book, but also how it applies to a real business. And it's a framework you can absolutely adopt yourself. You don't need us. I'm not here to sell books or sell our services. I'm here to help small businesses to be successful. And then we'll do a little break after I show the case study of a business that's using that framework, and we can do a little Q&A there. And I think, Mike, maybe are you going to field questions?
Yes. Yep. Absolutely.
Okay,
yep.
Great. So we'll do a little 5-minute Q&A there. So be thinking as I'm talking here about questions you might have. We'll do a little break there for the Q&A. And then if there's a little time left, I've got one more framework that I want to share with you. That's a new one we've been developing around how to build a strategy on the values-based and vision-based way of running a business. Okay, so with that said, the reason I picked bamboo as the cover slide here and this idea of planting seeds is that bamboo is one of those plants where you water it for a couple years before you see many results. And what happens in that 3rd year is that it shoots up at an exponential rate. There's bamboo in Asia that will actually literally grow 30 inches a day. And it's just like remarkable phenomenon. But I share that because a lot of these things I'm going to talk about are like growing bamboo, that these ideas, you water them, and you don't necessarily see a lot of return right away. But when you do see that return, it's exponential. And that's, I think, the power of these kind of long-term strategic ways of thinking. I like starting these shows with a little bit of inspiration. This is my dad. He turned 78 this year in the middle of a pandemic. I'm like doing my best to kind of keep him out of restaurants and like isolated as much as possible. But he is a lifelong entrepreneur. Those are boxes filled with his product. He's like unstoppable. I've known him to be an entrepreneur pretty much my entire life. He started out as an elementary school teacher, and once he started down the path of entrepreneurship, he never stopped. And so as a kid growing up in the 70s and 80s, my brother and I, besides having a really awesome sense of fashion, we lived the life of an entrepreneur. And most of the time, that's pretty awesome. You have a lot of flexibility, a lot of freedom. My mom was able to stay home and, kind of teach us things like art and reading and just all kinds of cool things that were afforded to us because of entrepreneurship. And so I have a very kind of fond place in my heart for all the business owners out there who are doing great things for their families and for their communities. And, kind of a funny piece about this, I rummaged through some old photos and found our original office building. This is where our empire was, in the 70s. I sort of joke that we had vertical integration because we had 3 businesses in this one building. We had transportation, housing, and food, basically. Real estate office, sold motorcycles and jet skis, and then we had a hot dog restaurant in the back. And as a kid, this was a lot of fun. You could sit on the motorcycles, eat hot dogs, and take a nap in the real estate office. Really like idyllic childhood. I will say, though, that like 2020, like 2010, 1980 was a really brutal year. What happened was the government raised interest rates, and so our businesses suddenly became totally unviable. When the government raised interest rates to 14, 16, 18%, nobody buys houses, right? And nobody buys motorcycles and jet skis. So not unlike how the pandemic has affected restaurants or hotels and certain industries, you're seeing a time where there's just major stress on small businesses, and many of them have gone out of business. So I get that. We lost everything we had. We went bankrupt. We, really kind of went all the way to the bottom. And, it's funny, I didn't take from that lessons. Why would I ever want to be an entrepreneur? Instead, like 40 years later, I'm like, started a business. And I think the upside of being a business owner and running a purpose-driven business is just so much higher than the downside that it's hard to walk away from that. And, what we do today as a company, we are much like the Simple Numbers team. We're committed to helping small businesses grow. We call ourselves a small business catalyst. And the type of clients we have are very similar probably to the Simple Numbers clients, right? They're owner-operated businesses. They're in all kind of industry. These are actual real, these aren't stock photos. These are real clients that we've worked with in robotics and engineering and IT and construction. Really, all that matters is that they are an owner-operated business and that generally they care about their people. If those 2 parameters match, then generally we want to help them out, whether that's us doing the work or we refer them to people. I refer a ton of people to Simple Numbers, and say, hey, you're not right for us, but if you go over here, these guys can help you. Fundamentally, what we're trying to do is help people like my dad who didn't have access to knowledge, right? If you think about running a small business in the 70s and even in the 80s, you were on an island. And what we're trying to do is bring things like strategy and marketing and best practices operations to these small businesses so they can thrive and grow and be community participants. And so one of the key ideas that we bring to the table that I think I didn't really understand really until maybe the last 5 or 10 years of my career is, what is business strategy? And if you ask 20 business owners what strategy is, you will get 20 different answers, much like marketing. And the reason why I think strategy and marketing are so confusing is that they're very powerful, but folks don't know how to wrap their hands around them. And so what I've done here in this next slide is I'm sharing with you, I think, probably one of the best interpretations of strategy that I've seen that our team has come up with to say, like, fundamentally, this is at the core of strategy, which is you're trying to achieve something, you have limited resources, and there is uncertainty. And, whether it's, a guy like Mike, who was in the military, right? There's strategic decisions you have to make where uncertainty is almost always a component of it and you're taking a risk. There's very rarely unlimited resources. Same with business. Much of what you do, either in your business strategy or in your marketing strategy, the hallmark of a great strategy is that there is actually risk. If there's no risk, it's probably a tactic, right? If, for example, I think SEO and pay-per-click is a great example of a marketing tactic that a lot of times people think, they talk about it like it's strategic. That industry is pretty mature. Like, you really know if you spend X amount of dollars, you're going to get X amount of eyeballs, you're going to get X amount of clicks. There's not a lot of uncertainty to that. But there are other things like, I would say, for example, Greg Crabtree writing a book, that was a very strategic move. Who knew that people would actually want to read it? Who knew that it would be handed out and people would be like, wow, this is amazing. Those things were not known when he wrote his first book. And so I would argue that's a great example of a strategic move that Simple Numbers has taken. So since we're talking about Simple Numbers, I thought I would show you my financials for the first 9 years of our business. Very advanced graph here. Looked a little bit like this, up and to the right. Not in a massive progression. Like a lot of businesses, the first, few years, you're just sort of figuring out what it is we offer. And then as you get a little bit better, you might make a little bit more money, you might build a few more customers, you might get a little bit more word of mouth. And so generally you make a little more money every year than the prior year. And, as a baby business owner, I sort of thought that's how it worked, right? You do good work and people refer you and you get more clients and you keep growing that way. I was not at all strategic. Essentially what Kinesis did for those first 9 years was we took orders from in-house marketers. So in-house marketers would come to us and say, hey, I want to build a new website, or I need a business card, or I need a new logo, or I want to rebrand our company. And we help them do that. And so we have a ton of expertise knowing what it was like to work for a small business, but specifically somebody trying to do marketing within a small business. And I never really questioned that in those 9 years. It was just like, hey, how do I serve you? And how do I do what you're asking me to do? And that's how we made money. And there's a lot of companies that do that kind of work to this day. You can build an okay business doing that, as we did. Then, of course, we ran into a buzzsaw in 2010, which was really the 2008 recession catching us. We didn't feel it in 2008. We didn't actually even feel it in 2009. And in fact, in October of 2009, I remember it like yesterday, I was sitting in a seminar with Greg Crabtree, watching him put up a spreadsheet about how you don't really know your numbers as a small business owner. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know my numbers. And it was just this epiphany. I was like, I'm so excited. I want to work on my business through this dimension of small, simple numbers. And then in January, so 2-3 months later, like I'm laying off my entire staff. And that was such a tough moment, such a powerful lesson, because it was like, I felt like I was basically repeating what happened to my dad in 1980. I had let everybody down. I was a failure. I just like, what am I doing this for? Right. And so it was such a massive moment of heartbreak, because, 1 month I'm sitting in a chair thinking aspirationally about, living the Crabtree way. And then the next day I'm like laying off all my employees. And, here's my simple numbers of like what that looked like, and I'm really fortunate in that I was young. That's really what it boils down to. I started the business naively at 28, 29. And so when this happened to me, it wasn't like I was getting ready for retirement. And so it afforded me an opportunity to try to reinvent. And, sometimes opportunity comes in different flavors. It was a dumpster fire, no question about it, much like 2020 in a lot of ways. But, I think that's another hallmark of entrepreneurs is we pick ourselves back up and we figure things out. And the key to that was asking the question of what matters to a small business owner. If they're our clients, what matters to them? And the problem I had had for the prior 10 years or so is I was not asking that question. What I was asking was, what would you like? And that answer was coming from largely an in-house marketing person. And I started examining that relationship, you know, the owner to the marketing manager to a vendor like Kinesis. And what I started realizing, and I realized this because of the recession, is that when times got hard, owners would fire their marketing managers or they would just eliminate their budget, right? Be like, I like you as a person, but I'm not going to give you any money to do anything. And so you have a job, but you can't really do anything other than what you can do with your own two hands. And so what that told me in that time was that there was a disconnect between owners and marketers, because if marketing's job is to help a business grow and thrive, if that's the first person you fire when times get hard, or the first line item you cut, it tells me that that arena is not actually delivering the kind of value that it should deliver. And there's a ton of reasons for this, right? It's easy to like point the finger at the in-house marketer and be like, well, you don't know how to do your job, or you're not that good. You know, there's a lot of reasons, right? So reason number one is the in-house marketing manager started out as an administrative person in the company and kind of liked doing marketing. So then they get promoted into a marketing role, but they don't necessarily know how to think about marketing in a strategic way. Maybe they're early in their career. Maybe they've never had mentorship. Maybe the owner hasn't given them the authority to try big things because he or she thinks of them as an admin, right? I see that dynamic all the time. Often owners don't know what a great marketer looks like, and so they don't know how to hire one, right? Often they've never seen marketing do something really remarkable in their company, so they devalue it intrinsically. Then they go and they hire somebody straight out of college who's never had experience. So lots of reasons why the in-house marketer is in many ways set up to struggle. And so I really thought about it, and I thought, you know, what could we do to position ourselves so that we're providing value, not to the in-house marketer, but actually to the owner. And the way we went about doing this is we started asking kind of a simple question. What makes a small business win? And it turns out there is some stuff that will show you this, but it's not actually talked about very much. So we grabbed three key resources for this data. The first one is a study that a friend of mine did called The State of the Business Owner. I love this one because it's a big data set. It's over 1,000 owners with an average annual revenue of 4.7 million. I mean, kind of right in the strike zone of our customer set, probably in the strike zone of Mike's customer set. You know, like these are like real legit businesses that have momentum. HBR did some really cool stuff on how to eliminate problems and defections, which is customer turnover in business. And then Gallup has just done a ton of work on engaged employees and profitability. And so the things that we found, you know, in that research, and I'm going to go kind of quick here, is basically if you have an engaged workforce, they are going to massively outperform a business that has a disengaged workforce. And what's crazy is like, this has actually gotten traction in the last, 4 or 5 years, but you still have actually 2/3 of employees are disengaged. And I guarantee COVID is not making that any better. Number two, simple idea, again, engaged employees equals happy customers, right? If you have employees who are excited to come to work, they generally are going to treat their customers really well and think about how to add value. So if you have happy customers stay with you, right? And if you can keep customers from leaving, you can be more profitable. So in this study, they showed if you could reduce customer turnover by 5%, you could increase profitability by anywhere from 25 to 85% in service-based businesses, B2B, generally B2B service-based businesses. So that was really interesting to me. Like, wow, I spend all this money on marketing. What if I spent energy on keeping customers? Like I could really, really change how successful the business was. And the reason for this is that when you hold on to a customer, you generally don't have to spend as much money to acquire a new one. And new customers, there's more friction, there's more uncertainty, there's more volatility with them. Existing customers are more predictable. They tend to spend more money with you. So for all kinds of reasons, your profit stack increases when you keep customers. And then this last one, the 30, 50, 60 rule, which came out of the State of the Business Owner, companies in that 1700 business set, if they had a marketing plan, they outperformed those that didn't have marketing plans by growing considerably faster. If they had a written vision, this is amazing. They grew 50% faster than those that didn't have a written vision. And then finally, if they tracked metrics, the owner took home about 50% more profit than those who were not tracking metrics, which, boy, I think I just basically sold everybody on hiring simple numbers. So, what's cool about this data is it's saying the same thing, right? It's cast a vision to the future, write it down, and track it. And those fundamental ideas formed much of what we began to focus on. So we built this framework called Marketing from the Inside Out. And it's kind of one of these classic things where its simplicity is deceptive. And many people, when they see this, they're like, oh, wow, we do that. And I find a lot of businesses that do this. So think of it as the rings of a tree. And if you think about a tree, the way it grows, it's the oldest part is at the center, right? So the little sapling that, had to scratch and claw its way to survive and, live through those early snows is at the center of the tree. Those rings are the beginning of the tree, which is why, in general, you think about the first thing that matters is your mission, your vision, and your values, what it is you stand for, and figuring out that in an authentic way. More and more businesses I see work on this now. When I started the business in 2000, and actually we were trying to do this work, everybody looked at us like we were crazy. So it's nice that the market catches up to you after 20 years. Second piece is if you can craft a mission and a vision and values, and you can cultivate it and you can live to it in an authentic way, you can build a culture of engagement. If you fake that stuff, if you put, I'm just going to use some language here. If you put bullshit motivational posters in your kitchen, that is not going to create a culture of engagement. On the other hand, if you hire and fire and live to the values and you sacrifice on those values, if you walk away from a customer who has money in their hand in order to stick to your values, that's the kind of thing that builds a culture of engagement. And if you can build a culture of engagement, that culture can facilitate remarkable delivery to your customers. And by what I mean by that is not just taking orders, but actually delivering value. And if you can deliver value, if you can deliver it in a remarkable way, you get what I think fundamentally has been at the root of most small businesses' success, especially those who are not good at marketing. You get raving fans. And raving fans come from people who have great experiences. And when they have great experiences, they share those experiences with others, right? I mean, I've lost count of how many people I refer to Simple Numbers, not because Simple Numbers has amazing marketing, but because Simple Numbers has remarkable delivery, right? And so in many ways, this is a marketing ecosystem that defies a lot of the traditional, oh, you need branding and design and websites and email marketing campaigns. This is more of a foundational idea that you can build upon. And I have found many, many businesses that are financially successful and durable and their teams stay with them have actually built this, and they just aren't aware that they've built this. And the power of acknowledging it is you can actually then amplify it. If you have built this or you've built some of the early stages of it, you can do things like, hey, culture of engagement, what's in that ring? Well, things like really great job descriptions that actually describe what it's like for a great candidate to work in this company. Not the nonsense of must be able to lift 50 pounds or use Excel, but it's like, come work for us. I'll just use Simple Numbers. Come work for us and make a meaningful difference in the lives of small business owners, right? Like that's a description of a job that's compelling and exciting. So that's an example of fostering a culture of engagement in a deliberate way. Remarkable delivery, right? Do your invoices go out and they are hard to read and are confusing, and I don't know what I should pay, or is actually paying somebody simple, right? I have the best partners I work with. I don't actually ever think about how I pay them. It just happens, right? So you remove the friction of one of the key parts of delivery. Or when you onboard a customer, do you clearly articulate what's going to happen with them in the next 3 to 6 months, right? Do you set that expectation and then deliver on that expectation? A lot of companies do great work, but the customer's kind of like, what am I doing? When am I doing it? I'm not sure, right? So think about how you onboard an employee. A lot of folks are really good at that. Are you onboarding your customers also in a remarkable way? So these are all ways where you can start to amplify the marketing from the inside out framework. And I could go on, but we only have so much time. So I want to show you this in action and I could have picked like a dozen different clients or folks we've worked with in the past, maybe aren't working with us anymore. Those are great too. But I wanted to pick somebody who's at that bamboo stage of 30 inches a day, right? So he's worked with us for about 3 years, and you can actually like see the bamboo growing now. His name is Devin Paolo. He's a steel fabricator out in a rural community here nearby called McMinnville. He runs a business called Solid Form. And the thing about steel fabrication, if you understand this industry, is just about anybody with a truck and a welder can call themselves a steel fabricator. So it's super noisy. There's a lot of competition at all different price points. And the reason I chose Solid Form is that marketing, the more competition there is, the more noise there is, the harder marketing is. And typically the more money you have to spend on marketing to kind of rise above the noise. And so he's a good example of somebody who had limited resources, right? He didn't have more money than God. And there's a lot of uncertainty of how we're going to apply the marketing strategy here. So one of the things that Devin did is he started examining what made his business what it was. And as he started looking inward and looking at his employees and saying, what do our employees love to do? What are the projects that make them thrive? What are the projects that bring about a culture of engagement? And then he looked at his clients. He said, well, what clients hire us over and over again? What clients send us thank you notes when we do great work? And it turns out those two groups actually had a lot of affinity. And that affinity that they had was they appreciated ingenious projects. They appreciated projects that were actually complex and required a level of creative problem solving that was much, much higher than just like fabbing things together day in and day out. So as he started thinking about, this is what our employees enjoy and causes them to be engaged. This is what our clients are willing to pay for, and there's margin behind it. What's the overlap? And what we helped him do is not tell him what he was, but actually to help uncover that his mission was one of ingenuity. And one of the key tenets that we talk about in the Marketing from the Inside Out book is the idea of the one-word mission statement. What is the one thing that you as a company are committed to over and over and over again, regardless of your business model, regardless of what the offering is, regardless of the price point? And it turns out Devin is committed to ingenuity. And on top of that, let's layer his vision, right? Which is this idea, and he talks about it in his TED Talk, of right fit career paths, of not thinking about steel fabricators as just like blue collar guys who, whatever, they're the labor. Actually, let's think about them like you would think about any professional in any industry, that they're going to want development. They're going to want to learn new skills. They're going to want to have mentorship. They're going to want to have a career path. And how can we think about forging those right fit career paths for an industry that typically treats employees like a disposable commodity? And so going in that idea of overlapping mission of ingenuity with his vision of a right fit career path, that means that the type of activities you do that may not look like marketing to most are actually pretty interesting and filled with uncertainty. So for example, he developed a growth map for welders and fabricators on the shop floor that was a size that they could put in their pocket, So they could actually keep it with them at any time. But the idea is, what are the things that they're going to do to develop themselves and to build their careers? And how do those things align with the vision of the company? Like, there's no fab shop that is doing this kind of thing, right? So lots of risk associated with this, right? And some employees were like, why do I have to do this? I don't want to do this, right? Because they come from the world that treated them like they were a disposable commodity. So there's a lot of work shifting the existing mindset. So what if you used ingenuity and rethought the org chart? What if instead of a series of boxes and a pyramid where the top most important person is at the top, what if it was a start with why org chart? So at the center is your purpose, right? That those who are moving to the middle of the organization are those who've probably been there the longest and best understand what the purpose of the organization is, its why. And those on the outside are the new ones, right? Those are the ones that are like the entry-level fabricators. And we're actually training them to learn about the purpose of the organization. And they can advance to different roles, but they can also change roles. They can move between engineering and fabrication. So there's flexibility and ingenuity there. And then lastly, the strategy that we employed, the uncertainty, was to become a champion for these ideas, right? And go out into the community and speak to these ideas, get up on a TED stage and talk about, the power of the skilled trades and developing young men and women into, into productive members of society, right? Into career professionals. And what about if you reached out to the community and said, hey, do you care about skilled workforce? Do you care about developing the next generation of people in our community? Well, let's get together. Let's have a conference for this. And this is pre-COVID, right? So we're all sharing the same air here. But what's cool about this is that even though COVID locked everything down, we had an unconference this summer that was virtual and actually had twice as many participants. So even though COVID disrupted some things, the strategy and the direction didn't change. So what if, in addition to like bringing together a community of people who care about workforce, what if you actually start helping those who maybe don't have access to the means, right? So let's do a fundraiser with some of the local wineries who actually are also our customers, and bring together those folks, the contractors that want to hire us, and put together an endowment that allows kids coming out of high school who maybe can't afford their own tools to get those tools for free, right? So this is, doing good in the community. It's marketing, it's creating a space to meet those who actually ultimately could hire you, but for a larger purpose. What's cool about this, and with all of our clients, is we're trying to measure what's working in the way bamboo grows, right? So you're trying to see, like, what are we trying to achieve? For Devin, we wanted to grow his workforce. We wanted to increase the amount of money clients were spending. We wanted to get bigger projects, increase the size of those projects. We wanted to create a $500,000 endowment, because at that point it spits out enough money every year to pay for the scholarships, right? So those are the KPIs of marketing that we were looking at that an owner cares about, and thinking about marketing through that lens, transforming an organization to where he's in a position of thought leadership, where Association of General Contractors calls him and says, hey, will you come speak at our keynote? And now he's on the stage talking to a room full of right fit customers. And he's talking to them not because he's figured out the best way to weld things. He's talking to them because he has a core passion, a vision, and a mission. And he's taken the risk to put that out there in the world. These other pieces, obviously amplify that. But I think this last idea is probably one of the coolest, which is that now clients find Devin instead of Devin trying to find clients. And there's a lot of different ways he could have gone about things, right? I think the sort of expected way was, okay, Devin, you sell metal fabrication. Let's go buy Google keywords that say steel fabrication, McMinnville, Oregon. And that's a legitimate approach, right? But what I wanted to share with y'all today was more of an approach of how to grow some bamboo, because what happens when you grow that bamboo is that even though you might see incremental benefits from that steel fabricator, McMinnville, Oregon approach, you never really see that exponential move, which is what you get when you do something that's remarkable. Okay, so I know I went through that pretty quickly. I wanted to leave time for, we got about 20 minutes left here. I want to leave maybe 5 or 10 minutes to do a little Q&A. And then I want to share another framework as well as some other clients or other businesses that have used this type of framework and use strategy and remarkability. So Mike, I'll turn it over to you if there's anything, you know.
Yeah, I don't have anything right now. I do have one though that you know, you touched on it briefly earlier, but due to COVID-19 and stuff, you've seen now through 2 different crazy periods, right? So that, you know, not many people see that. Some started before or after, but some like yourself have been able to see both. What have you seen differently from a marketing standpoint for each different time, right? So 2019, you know, 2010, there might have been a pullback where you've seen people just pull back. Was this different where you've seen people say, hey, we're gonna keep going, we're gonna maybe do something like this to engage? Because now we see a lot of maybe people walking around who've been laid off or you know, looking for a different opportunity. What just your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you know, gosh, you're asking me to remember events from 10 years ago. But yeah, my impression of the Great Recession was everybody just kind of pulled back, like retreat, try to survive. You know, it wasn't, oh, this no longer works. Let's try a different way of marketing. Let's try a different way of going to market. It was just like curl up in a ball and try to live. This time around, I think a lot of people like myself who have the benefit of having that last experience, I think our initial reaction, let's say March, April, May, somewhere in that range, was like, okay, what's going on here? Is this another Great Recession? What do we do? And there was a paralysis moment, like I would say for a month or 2 months. And folks just kind of stopped doing stuff. And that was overlaid too. You get the complication of George Floyd and like, how do I market in the middle of like sort of this moment of like, you know, just really dramatic uncertainty and anxiety. And so a lot of folks just sort of like froze. And I don't think that was the wrong thing to do. I think a lot of who were just trying to assess what to do. And I think the really savvy ones, what they did is they went to their customer base and they reassured them and they offered to help. And that was their marketing, right? Like,
sure.
What can I do to help you? You know, do you need to change our payment terms? Do you need to pause? What is it? You know, do you need us to actually do more work for you? A lot of our clients, like we did more work for them because they were like, our plan doesn't work with this. So we built new plans and we didn't charge them for it. So there's a lot of that. I think once you got past that like frozen moment, and the PPP, I think helped a lot with that, as did unemployment in terms of the labor side. A lot of folks were like, oh, okay, we can't meet in real world, so we're going to do everything digitally, right? And so it was like, okay, we're going to do digital conferences. After they got past the denial, right? There was first the denial. Oh, we'll be back together in July, and I was like, no, you're not. But you know, I couldn't convince people. But once they got past the denial, the answer was like, oh, it'll be digital. We'll just do digital. And I think the problem with that is that much of the marketing industry is a little opportunistic. And if you come to them and say, I think I need to do digital, and they do digital, they're going to tell you to do digital. You know, they're not going to say, actually, I don't think that's right. Or they're not going to say, well, what do you mean by that? And that was, I think, what's going on right now is that folks are unlike 2010, want to find an answer. And digital marketing definitely is way more mature now, but a lot of times they're not asking the right question as to what does that look like. And so I think that's what's happening now is there's a lot of like, do I do this or do I not? And then there's Zoom fatigue and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
I'm surprised.
I got 2 questions for you I want to get to just so we can keep going. Actually, three now. So it's the first one is, what happens when you try thought leadership and it doesn't work? How do you figure out what resonates before spending time and resources?
That is a great question. I would say that the best way to increase your odds with strategy, which has uncertainty in it, is to talk to customers and like understand what it is. What is the tie that binds all these clients together and the right customers together? So if, one of the things we helped Devin do is we interviewed all of his clients that were the right fit clients. And we just asked tons and tons of questions, open-ended, not leading. And what you invariably find when you do that process is you discover commonalities between those customers. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing, and I think this is so true, I think this is true for Greg at Simple Numbers, I think this is true for Devin, is it really needs to tie into your passion. Like, I think to just do thought leadership around something that seems like a good idea, I don't think it's genuine. And I think people catch that. Whereas when Devin's talking about workforce development and career paths, you believe it. And people who are passionate about it connect to that. And I think that's super important.
And I'm going to throw it out there. The guy who asked the question is Alan Pence, who just released a book about his passion and 5G, Alan. I know it's out there. Owner of Corner Alliance. Go pick it up. Good stuff from Alan. So I'm plugging Alan there.
Right on.
Next question. The typical sale of marketing services is generally understood. Your approach is much different. How do you structure the discussion to lead to this approach if a potential client comes looking for a traditional service?
My colleague Allison is on the phone. She does a lot of this work. Basically telling people that what they're asking for is not the right thing. That's really hard. Ultimately I try to start with questions like, what is it you're really trying to do? You tell me you want a new website. A lot of our clients come to us and they say, I want a new website. And we're like, well, what's driving that? And if you can start asking the why, eventually you get to something like, well, I want to grow. Well, why do you want to grow? Well, because at our size, we can't get the type of customers that treats us with the kind of respect and esteem that we need to do the kind of work that we want to do that makes our employees really excited. Oh, that's really interesting. So maybe a website will do that, but other things might do that too. And so then you try to open their mind to other ways that people can think. And it is super hard because I've gotten, some prospects and they're just obstinate. Well, these other guys will do this website for me for, $5,000. And what will it cost for you to do it? And I was like, that's actually that's not the conversation that you want to have. And some folks believe me and are open and excited and they make great clients. And then ones who don't. And the market will eat them up. So I hate to say it, but yeah.
To piggyback off Alan's first question, can a company do thought leadership that doesn't depend on the owner?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I think it's the best place to start, but I think it can be done. We're starting to make that shift. Where we're creating opportunities for employees to be in those positions at Kinesis, and they believe in that. They believe in our vision. So that's the key. I would say that's the key if you're going to be successful.
It seems like marketing companies struggle to have a model that works across companies. How do you overcome that?
Marketing companies struggle to have a model that works across companies. So like can you read that again? I'm not sure if I really understand it.
It seems like marketing companies struggle to have a model that works across companies. And then he followed up with like Crabtree does. How do you overcome that? So for example, like we're industry neutral, right? So right. I think that's where.
How do we overcome? I got you. Yeah.
Yep.
And that's true. Like most marketing companies are organized vertically or around an industry. So what we organize around is a people-centric, right? So so people-centric businesses are usually service businesses. We don't usually have widget-based companies. And if they are making widgets, like a machine shop, those widgets are one-off, right? Like it's design, it is made to print kind of ideas, right? So it's more of a consultative role. We also organize around B2B for the most part. The consumer space is so complex and big. We're too small to be awesome at all these things. So we try to organize around B2B, service-based businesses, and then where the owner is a purpose-oriented owner. And if those things overlap, that's the Venn diagram. Like we can figure out the industry. I really believe that. Just like you all have figured out the finance side of the industry. Yeah.
Good. Awesome.
Cool.
Got it.
That's
good.
A great
Okay.
question.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead.
All right. Last piece. And this might help with some of those questions too. So I want to show you this new framework that we've been thinking about lately, which is where does strategy live? And a lot of it is building upon what I've shared with you earlier in the talk. So if you think about this idea of a mission, what are you driven by? In Devin's case, it was ingenuity. Kinesis, our mission is transformation. And we're trying to transform the small business landscape and make it healthier and powerful and impactful. Knowing what your mission is, if you can get to that one-word mission statement. The second kind of pillar of this idea is finding a remarkable position. So with Devin, his remarkable position is like believing in the power of employees and investing in them and creating a place where they're allowed to thrive. All right. And that's daring, right? It takes a risk, right? So remarkable position almost always takes a risk, but if you can build that. And then the third piece is, do you have a strong vision? What are you trying to do that people are excited about? And I love examples of like NASA, right? NASA, especially in the 60s, 70s, like they had such a powerful vision of, if I were to say, what is their one-word mission? It's probably discovery. Their vision is let's put a man on the moon, right? And that, their remarkable position. I think what makes them remarkable, honestly, I've been thinking about this a lot, is they took risks in an arena that is not risk centric, right? They think about those test pilots that were flying those crazy airplanes, right? So their remarkable position was being risky in an arena that doesn't have risk associated with it. And so I think that if you want to think about where does strategy live, I think great strategy really lives here. And then finally, and I think this is a really hard but powerful thing, really great strategy you can sum up in a sentence. And so like with Devin, his mission of ingenuity, David, who does robotics, automation, his mission is revolution. He believes that industry is just so backwards. It's basically doing the same thing it did back in the 80s. Teo, who's a precision machinist, he's an innovator. He just totally wants to build new things. So these three guys all have a really clear mission, what they're committed to as owners. And, we talked about Devin's strategy of becoming the champion of the skilled trades, right? It's what's great about this, right? It's a succinct strategy that he's engaged in. David's strategy is to capture the imagination of visionary thinkers. So what he's doing these crazy YouTube videos on automation and what they can do. And he's experimenting and going crazy, like kind of shouting out into the void. And then like people are hearing it and like, yeah, that's interesting. I'm a visionary thinker and I control budget and I'm going to hire you. And then, Teo is a long story I won't go into today, but basically he wants to build the Amazon of precision machining. So to have the kind of logistics and transparency and to see the quality level of the parts he's making through a web portal, right? So totally radically reinvented the machining industry. All three of them, doesn't matter what their industry is, but they have a clear mission and they're able to summarize what their strategy is in one sentence. So I think that gives us just a few minutes left. I'd be happy to, make an offer. If you publish, you don't make any money on books. But I really did write this book with the idea of helping people. We have tons of copies of it. I'm happy to send you one if you wanted to give me a holler. I would say this book is really great for some of those early stage companies, or if you really want to tackle mission, vision, values. It's not as heavy on strategy on some of these things we've showed you in thought leadership. We wrote it, I think it's been, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, maybe even 7. So, you kind of look back and go, oh, I missed that. And so I need to write a second book, kind of like Greg. Mike, anything else?
Yep,
No.
got one here. What is 1 to 2 ideas you would have for business coaches, for mid and small companies to implement this remarkable concept?
Yeah, business coaches. Wow. So it's a lot like steel fabrication. It's a really noisy industry. There's a lot of people who are doing it. And then the competitive mind share is pretty high too, right? You think about, do I spend money with a coach? Do I join a Vistage group? Do I join EO? Do I create my own peer-to-peer? That is a tough one. I mean, I think, like with Devin, I don't think I could have told him, become the champion of the skilled trades just by hearing what his business was. I think that what you need to do as a coach is probably talk to your best fit customers and take really good notes, or hire somebody to interview them and ask very open-ended questions. And I think you can start to tap into a theme there. I think knowing who your right fit customer is important, because that's going to inform how you want to be remarkable. I'm not remarkable if you are a corporate VP of marketing. You probably don't give a shit about me. But I want to be remarkable if you own a small business. And so that's a big part of strategy and getting to thought leadership, is knowing who you're talking to. I think Greg's the same way. Like, Greg doesn't care about Apple and how it does finance, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Sorry. That's a really tough one.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, but that's good. I mean, I think a lot of times, all of us, it's good to hear from your customers, especially the core ones, especially, we run mastermind groups, and that, Shawn, I talked to you, you're one of them. So, I mean, you're one of them for us. And, when we hear that come from those people, that's what gives you an idea. And you're like, hey, that's what these people focus and care about. And we're revamping right now in our part of the firm. Just how we do it at this office is a different approach to, the tax strategy for our consulting clients. And we're changing that offering, and they're going to see here in a little bit, because, hey, we talked to them, we got feedback, and actually sat down and really outlined what they actually care about. And so that's something, I think, where it all starts there. Another thing, Alan wanted to know, what resources you'd recommend on thought leadership?
Trying to think about, like, who does thought leadership really well. Maybe instead of thinking about it, I'm going to buy a book on thought leadership, but maybe who's killing it. So, I mean, I think Greg's a great example of, like, he's not necessarily like, wow, I want a charismatic, rally the troops speaker, and I'm going to go get an accountant. But actually, he has such great, like, little things, like, you can milk the cow or you can have a barbecue, right? Like, I look at people, I almost look at folks who are doing it well, and what can I learn from them? So what I learned from Greg, for example, is he takes hard ideas and turns them into a really simple, easy to understand concept. And that's what I can take from Greg and learn from Greg. I think about, I think Simon Sinek's a really good, like, he's done a good job of creating thought leadership. And as I think about, well, what has enabled him to get to that position? And I kind of reverse engineer that. I'm like, wow, if you look at his first talk on Start With Why, it's like super kind of low rent, right? He's like got a flipboard and markers. And what you can see there is he's sort of figuring out an idea and building on it. And now it's like beautiful lighting and all this, like, good audio and stuff like that. And so you see, what is it? They try things and then they build upon them and build upon them. And I think Devin is no different, right? Like, he didn't just become a thought leader. He's like, I care about this thing. How do I implement it? I'm going to build a growth map. I'm going to rethink my org chart. So I think to start from things you're passionate about and to experiment around those things and then see if there's attraction to that. And I think that is way more powerful. I think of Greg's success with simple numbers. He started with something he really cared about. It wasn't, I want to become a thought leader around X because the market wants it. It was, I care about this thing, just like I care about small businesses, you know. And I honestly think maybe that's, we've exposed, and thank you for that question. I think this exposes one of the, I don't know, what do we call it? Like traps of the idea of thought leadership is that we think it's a thing, right? We think it's a like pay-per-click or like SEO or like branding. We think it's a thing, but actually it's an output. And I think Devin is a great example of that. He is a thought leader, not because he said, I want to be a thought leader. He's a thought leader because he said, I care about this thing and I want to figure it out. And then he invested in it and there was uncertainty and risk. But as he grew it, he started to see signs and signals that the market cared about it. And I think that's the path to great thought leadership is you try things that you care about and see, does the market respond? And if it does, then you keep building upon that and building upon that. You know, I showed Devin in like 10 minutes, but that's like 3 years, right? And that's the deceptiveness of these kinds of talks, is that it's a journey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, good. And I know Alan who's asking the questions. He I mean, what he's passionate about with his 5G stuff, when he gets going on it, I mean, just like, it's just like Greg with the number stuff, you know, it's like, hey, you got it, man. I mean, just roll with it. And his book's on that, you know, and building that infrastructure for the future around that stuff. And so, you know, those are some of the things that he cares about too. So yeah, this is great. I mean, I don't have anything, have anything else here, but thank you, Shawn. Greatly appreciate it. Everyone who's listening, I'll get the recording out. And that way, those who didn't make it, usually they all sign up so they can get the recording. I got to quit telling them all I'm going to push it out so they show up. But
there you go.
All right, Shawn, I appreciate it. Take care. Thank you.
All right. Really
see you, everyone. Bye. Okay.